entrance of the guests. Music by Prokofiev. You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. The ultimate love story plays out on the Centennial Concert Hall stage this week as the Royal Winnipeg Ballet presents Romeo and Juliet. One of the hallmarks of the celebrated production is the marvelous score prepared by Sergei Prokofiev, which captures the essence of the play through powerful melodies and dynamic orchestration. To talk more about the music, Maestro Julian Pellicano, music director and principal conductor of the RWB, has joined me. Welcome back to Classic 107, Julian.
Thank you very much, Simon. Always a pleasure to be back here.
Well, hopefully this first question is a pleasure, though admittedly it's a bit of a hard-hitting one. This, one of the most well-known and best-loved ballet scores. Where does Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet rank for you personally?
Oh, I mean, I think for me personally, it is one of the most satisfying, if not the most satisfying piece of music I've ever conducted. And I think I can speak for musicians in orchestras worldwide that this is probably their favorite ballet to perform out of all of them. Out of the entire repertoire, that's what I keep hearing from musicians especially in the Winnipeg Symphony. They love playing this music.
We're going to get to what makes this score so special, but I'm curious to hear more about your own sort of journey with this, because it was last done in 2019, and if my memory serves correctly, it was 2019 that you were appointed music director of the RWB, right? It's right around the same time?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's correct. But Romeo and Juliet that year was conducted by Earl Stafford, former music director of the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. Yeah. So I didn't conduct it in 2019. My first experience conducting this was last June at the National Ballet of Canada with the Alexei Ratmansky choreography. And so, which was an amazing experience. It's a different production, though. It's a more recent production. Our production at the RWB is truly a classic production by Rudy van Danzig, and we have been performing this here in Winnipeg since 1981.
Wow.
And it is one of the great productions worldwide, and Winnipeg is one of the only places where you can see it outside of the Netherlands. So we're really lucky. It's beautiful on stage, and the music itself, of course, doesn't change from production to production, and that that really is my area, of course. Yeah. And so it's really wonderful to always to come back to this music. Of course, orchestra fans will know this music if they haven't been to the ballet. They'll know this from the orchestral suites. Of course, most conductors are familiar with that music, but not every conductor gets to actually conduct the actual ballet, and there's much more music in the ballet than there is in the suites.
As you say, we just heard a little snippet from the orchestral suite, welcoming you into the studio with the entrance of the guests. Can you talk about going on that journey with the full score, though? What's it really like to dive into this music for you as a music director and conductor?
Well, a big part of it is what's happening on stage. At least that's the way that I approach every ballet that I conduct. I start with what happens on stage. And then after that, go and learn the music, and then come back to how it relates now after I've taken it apart. How does it now relate, and how do I perceive it on the stage after that point? But yeah, really, that's always the starting point, is the storytelling when it comes to conducting for ballet. And so it's different when there are no dancers. Then you have to conceptualize what it might look like or what the story is, and then tell that story just in music. But there's a bigger picture at play. We're playing music in ballet to serve a different purpose, to serve a bigger production. So that's part of the journey.
This is Prokofiev's writing is very much continuing in the grand ballet tradition of Tchaikovsky, for instance. But unlike Tchaikovsky, Prokofiev links his musical numbers to the drama itself. Like I'm thinking, instead of saying pas de deux, he writes balcony scene. Like the plot and the dance are completely intertwined, aren't they?
Yeah. Even in Tchaikovsky's ballets, they're older, and so the actual titles are like numbers. He numbered them. But in the scores of Tchaikovsky, there's even some stage direction from time to time. But it's not as extensive as in Prokofiev's time. And I think Prokofiev was trying to attempt something a little bit different. I mean, he himself said that he was trying to compose something new that had not been heard before, and it's kind of a how do I say? It's a type of music that blends the familiar with the abstract. It's it's intensely melodic, and yet there's a certain level of quirkiness to the music itself. And it's also this piece is written at a time in Prokofiev's life, which is he's moving back to the Soviet Union after being in the West, in the U.S. and Western Europe for 20 years, and there's a lot of pressure on him to compose in a certain manner as well. So one can sort of look at this ballet and see it as he's a bit in survival mode as well, trying to create this new thing. He has these great ideas, but also at the same time, he's being watched and checked by the Soviet authorities, and they were very focused on composers.
You know what's so interesting, and maybe listeners don't quite realize, but as I was prepping for this interview and reading through the history of Prokofiev writing Romeo and Juliet, he started it in 1935. It came to him really, really quickly. And then it was a work that ultimately was premiered in Brno, then part of Czechoslovakia. But it was supposed to be premiered by the Kirov, now the Mariinsky Theater. Then it got bounced to the Bolshoi, who postponed it indefinitely, calling the music undanceable. Can you talk more about what you maybe think made it so undanceable, I say in air quotes, back in 1938 in the late 30s?
Well, after the premiere, it was the Kirov premiere in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
The legendary ballerina Galina Ulanova, toasting Prokofiev after the performance, said, quoting the last line of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, "Never was a story of more woe than this of Prokofiev's music for Romeo," because there were so many problems from the very beginning, from 1935, and they continued until, I think, 46, when he finally, first of all, they felt the music was undanceable, the rhythms were too unpredictable. There was this whole thing about the music being too soft. And so they felt that they couldn't hear the music. He needed to reorchestrate, and they even brought him on stage to hear it. Now, today what we do is our orchestra in the concert hall is completely acoustic, but we do have microphones in the pit that have the music for speakers backstage, so the dancers can hear it. You obviously are familiar with this from dancing in Rusalka.
Yeah.
But I don't think they had that back then.
Good
so
point.
The music had to be loud enough. So, and Prokofiev didn't quite get that. It's not that he was a prolific ballet composer at that point. I mean, he had done some, and so he. So the music was too soft, and then I don't know if you read this part, but at the beginning they made it a happy ending.
The big correction.
They made it so that Romeo gets in 1 minute, but after Juliet wakes up and they live happily ever after, and people just could not accept that.
You're kind of messing with the great.
There are a lot of problems.
It's such a fascinating story, and I mean, the music really is incredible, and now it has become, like I say, a hallmark. It is one of the great ballet scores, as you were just saying earlier. There's sort of one other clue that I want to talk about, just to kind of bring listeners' attention and the audience's attention as they're kind of watching through, because it is such almost an overwhelming production. It is so grand. It is lush. There's sword fighting that's happening on stage. There's this great family drama and this incredible love story. We were talking earlier about how the plot and the actual dancing are very intertwined, and then adding to that connection is the use of leitmotifs, right? He kind of uses these musical motives. Can you explain that a little bit more for the audience, what that is exactly?
Oh, sure, yeah. Leitmotifs are, made famous by Richard Wagner in his operas, but also used by many composers had this idea as well, that a certain character or a certain idea should have music played along with it. And in this ballet by Prokofiev, it's not just the characters that enter. So in Act 1, you hear all the tunes, and then Acts 2, 3, and 4, they all come back. And even if somebody is thinking about, if a character is thinking about someone or something, you hear that music in the orchestra. So, it's kind of like, a lot of the drama ends up happening in the music, and the musical cues end up dictating the way the drama plays out in your mind in very interesting ways, even if that is not necessarily what seems to be happening on stage. Prokofiev really, and I think that it must have been a very intense collaboration between him and the choreographers and the librettists of this ballet to be able to create that level of detail in the score.
Yeah, there's a real emotional depth that comes with it. There's this sort of almost like psychological element too as you're working through it. And yeah, just another thing to listen for, because as I say, this is a hallmark. It's one that was last done in 2019. So if you're going back for a second time, you can catch these new bits, these new things to hold on to that just add to the drama throughout the entire work.
Yeah, I mean, with masterpieces like this, there's a reason why we perform them multiple times, because they're so deep and they're so well crafted that the interpretation can be very wide. There's so much to get from it as an interpreter, as from a listener. It can be different every time. And I'm not just talking about the music. I'm also talking about the dancers. Mm-hmm. The principal dancers, all of the dancers, but especially the principals, they're different than 5 years ago. Yeah. I mean, they are going to interpret this work in their own way. It's ever evolving. It's ever changing. And the genius of our incredible dancers at the RWB is that they truly make it their own. Even between both casts, I'm lucky I get to see both casts, and you can be too if you come on 2 nights. But I'm just saying, I'm very lucky I get to see, what different artists do with the role, and it's quite extraordinary.
One last question as I've got you here in the studio. You're watching that artistry unfold. You're in the pit. You truly have a front row seat. Can you talk about that interplay between dancer and orchestra and how you kind of serve right in between the two? Because you really do react to one another, right? It's such a symbiotic relationship that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yesterday morning, I was rehearsing with the orchestra. We're in the pit just by ourselves. And then in the afternoon, I was in the studio with the dancers. And I was saying, it's great to conduct the music, but really what I can't wait for is when I can conduct the music and I can actually see them, because it's different. It's completely different. I mean, I'm going to work with the orchestra again this morning, and I will conduct the music. I will rehearse it. But once I see what's happening on stage, I just react to that. And that's the way it has to be. That's the beauty of conducting for ballet, is that when you can actually watch the stage and you can go together, things change. It won't be the same as what I do this morning when the orchestra, it's just me and the orchestra in the pit. It'll invariably be different once I see the dancers on the stage.
All the more reason to check out the show. Opens tomorrow, Thursday, February 15th, running through Sunday, February 18th. And as you just heard, a music director and principal conductor of the RWB, Maestro Julian Pellicano, why not check it out twice? Because you could see a totally different production. No, I mean, this is one of the great works in the repertoire. For more details, head to rwb.org. Julian, as always, a pleasure having you here in the studio.
It's great to talk to you.